I've discussed how I hate all 31 teams, but how does the NHL hate all 31 teams? That seems to be a thing. So every day I'm reading about how the NHL hates certain teams. They just hate them. They hate them. They hate teams because even though it's a league of 31 owners that all meet together and decide on policies, and there's 31 general managers, none of whom have come out and said, well, the NHL hates us, so they don't return our calls. There is still a lot of fans saying, oh no, the NHL hates us, so let's go through all 31, shall we? So Anaheim, how does the NHL hate Anaheim? They don't win the draft lottery, so that's that. And the team got bad relatively quickly. I guess the NHL hates them for that as well. Arizona, here's where it gets weird. So Arizona, the NHL hates all of the Canadian teams because there's still a team in Arizona. But the NHL, while they love Arizona, they've never managed to love it enough to make it a profit or make it a playoff team since 2012. So there's no profit coming in and the team doesn't go to the playoffs. They don't win very many games or score many goals, but they're a league favorite because they don't move them. Boston is a league favorite because referees always favor Boston, except they don't. When you actually look at the stats, they don't. And then when Boston Bruins won the Cup in 2011, was this the way the NHL wants it because Gregory Campbell's there, and that's Colin Campbell's kid. Did he win another Cup ring after that? No. Did the Bruins win another Cup after that? No. I guess they let them reach the Stanley Cup Finals in 2013 and 2019, and then went to them and said, all right, we'll let you get to the finals, but if you win another cup, then it's going to look like it's rigged. So we're sorry. We're going to have to just have you guys get knocked out by the better team, which was Chicago in 2013 and St. Louis in 2019. Yes, I said the better team. I have no problem saying that. I don't think it's a big deal. Buffalo, the league hates Buffalo. It is the league's fault that the Buffalo Sabres have continually gone through new general managers and missed the playoffs and not improved a whole lot. And I guess the NHL has decided they don't like Jack Eichel either because they haven't given him a playoff team. But if Eichel goes somewhere else, that'll also be proof that the league hates Buffalo and not that it's poorly run. Because sometimes that's thrown out there when it's really the team's just poorly run. The NHL hates Calgary because 2004. Am I right? Huh? Yeah, the Jelena, right? Yep, there that is. The league hates Carolina because I don't know. I guess Carolina falls into a similar category as Arizona, where you're going to hear people saying, oh, the league favors Carolina, look at this. And yet Carolina doesn't really win anything. They won the Cup in 2006 through, I guess, Gary Bettman, Tripp, Dwayne Rollison when they got to the finals. Have a good game. Oh, shucks, your goalie's hurt. Let's see how that goes. But really, if the league's trying to rig anything for Carolina, they're doing a terrible job. They haven't been back to the finals since 2006, and they've made the playoffs, twice since 2006? They're doing a terrible job of rigging things. And it's the same thing, right? It's, well, they don't get the attendance, so move them, and yet they don't make the playoffs, so the favoritism doesn't seem to be there. Chicago. The league's hatred of Chicago abated apparently in the late 2000s, early 2010s. I certainly heard about it, where the league hated Chicago until then. And we're not into a realm where the league hates Chicago, but we're into a realm where even though Chicago hasn't made the playoffs for a few years now, if the Blackhawks get a good draft pick, that proves the league has it rigged in their favor, which is, yeah, okay. Colorado. Colorado, well, the league hates Colorado because ever since 2001, they haven't been back to the Stanley Cup Finals. And even though they've got Byram, they've got Makar, they've got McKinnon, they've got Rantanen, they've got Landeskog, the league doesn't like them because of that offside call against San Jose. So the league just doesn't like him. So sometimes the league is against a team getting a good draft pick. Sometimes the league is against a team getting further in the playoffs. Sometimes the team is in favor of certain teams making the playoffs. I picture like at the start of the year, all of the NHL, board of governors getting together, go, all right, who's going to get the number one draft pick this year? Come on, guys, who's getting the number one draft pick? Nope, not Detroit. Who's getting it? Pittsburgh, that's the right answer. But that means they can't win the Stanley Cup. So Pittsburgh, you guys aren't allowed to have the Stanley Cup. All right, who's going to get the Stanley Cup? St. Louis, you had it last year. I think it's, we'll find a way to get it to Montreal. We'll give it to Canada so they'll shut up. So, yeah, no, we'll just create a pandemic and then we'll have them get in the playoffs even though they probably shouldn't be there. Yeah, that's just how that works. Columbus, the league's dislike of Columbus could be because they haven't got past the first round other than once, which was last year. And just, free agency. Like, again, with some teams, I don't see a whole lot of the NHL clearly hates us. With Columbus, I guess that could be an argument. Dallas, I don't have an argument why the league hates Dallas. I have arguments about why Dallas's management sometimes seems to hate their fan base. Look, we have one mediocre goaltender. We're fixing it by getting another mediocre goaltender. They will both be our mediocre number ones. Oh, and we're paying them a combined $9 million. You're welcome, fans of Dallas. And then when they left, they go, hey, all right, so we got that messed up. We're going to bring in Ben Bishop, and then we're going to stop scoring goals. You're welcome, fans of Dallas. So that to me is more of a management thing than an NHL thing. Detroit, of course, right now, Wings fans are convinced the league hates them, even though they won how many Stanley Cups overall in the last 30 years? They've won a lot of Stanley Cups. Going through the rebuild is just what happens. The league, it's not in the league's best interest to screw them at the draft lottery. It really isn't. It would be in the league's best interest to have actually put Lafreniere in that location. And under Steve Yzerman, you'd have this great storyline. So yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Edmonton, well, yeah, we know the league hates Edmonton. Today, Ryan Kessler tweeted out in response to Bob McKenzie saying Edmonton and Toronto are the leaders in terms of potential hub cities, and he said every player right now is praying to play in Toronto. Don't be Edmonton kind of thing. So Kessler trolling Edmonton. I don't know how accurate that is. There seems to be players willing to play there. And the league, the city itself seems to be getting better. But again, does the league hate Edmonton? Sure, because Kessler, right? Anaheim, right? So Kessler saying that, it proves, right? Florida, well, the league doesn't hate Florida. But again, Florida you put in the same category as Carolina and Arizona, where the accusation is both the league favors Florida because they still have a team, even though that team hasn't won anything since 1996. LA, again, they won the Cup in 2012, 2014. I guess the argument could be made that they didn't get number one overall this year, but they got number two. So I'm not sure if you're a Kings fan, if the argument can be made that the league hates you. And then the reason that this video exists is because today Minnesota fans lost their minds. Kaprizov is not going to be eligible to play in the playoffs in all likelihood because his contract, they've decided, will kick in next year. Should he sign, he would not be eligible for the playoffs. Again, we're in a pandemic. We're in a one-time situation we really hope we're never in again, right? And so they're just saying we want it to be fair for everybody, and we feel kind of... The way I see it is the league looks at it as you're kind of getting a ringer you didn't have during the regular season, so no. And Minnesota fans are losing their mind and saying this is wrong, even though it's not just going to affect Kaprizov, because right underneath Minnesota's Montreal, and that affects Romanov coming over and playing as well. And that Romanov's contract now would kick in next season, and he wouldn't be eligible to play this season according to what they're apparently agreeing on. So before it's even officially announced, we have fans already screaming, that's it, the league has it in for us. It makes no sense to go against Minnesota, a team that hasn't reached the Stanley Cup Finals since being readmitted to the NHL as the Wild. Of course, they were the North Stars before that. Minnesota is a huge hub of hockey. It would be a great story if the Minnesota Wild won a Stanley Cup. So it makes no sense for the NHL to basically snowball any chance of them getting anywhere and kind of biting off the nose to spite their face. Same with Montreal. Montreal, the last Canadian team to win a Stanley Cup in 1993. It doesn't make any sense for them to have a hate on for Montreal. But again, that may very well be out there because they haven't won a cup since 93. Nashville. I don't think there's a whole lot of arguments to be had about Nashville, but you have 2017, you have the Stanley Cup Finals. Am I right? Was that a goal? Was it not a goal? I know how Nashville fans feel about that. New Jersey, yeah, Devils fans are kind of snippy, but Devils fans have to remember this team has been bad for a while. You even look back to the last time they went to the Stanley Cup Finals. That was kind of a surprise, and that was kind of a... It was kind of along the same lines as when Ottawa went to the almost the finals in 2017, where Pittsburgh narrowly beats them out, where it may have given a false sense of where the team actually was on the charts of things, and it felt like that was them trying to get one last Stanley Cup ring from Marty Brodeur, and then things changed after 2012. Islanders, well, Islander fans may be mad about Sorokin as well, because Sorokin would be impacted by this. And there may be Islander fans who say, hey, we haven't won a cup since 1983. The NHL clearly hates us. And yet they're getting a brand new arena. And there have been plenty of opportunities to move that team that the NHL said no. So the NHL has been clear they want to keep that team in New York. As bad as Barclays was, the other option might have been, hey, we're going to go to Quebec. The New York Rangers, they've only won one cup since 1940. The funny thing is, I've heard the argument that they rigged it in their favor in 94, and I've heard the argument that the situation's been rigged against the Rangers since then. So, really depends on your point of view on that, I guess. Ottawa Senators, well, coming out of the draft lottery, it's rigged against Ottawa, except for the fact that Ottawa's done pretty well with their draft picks, and having 3 and 5 isn't bad. Ask Detroit fans about having 4. So 3 and 5 isn't too bad. That's still a pretty good draft spot and a pretty solid draft. And for Ottawa, it was the way that this rebuild started was bizarre. Running off all of the veterans really made it odd as well. And it's a situation that now should have stopped, and we'll see if it has stopped. If Ottawa doesn't get better next year, does that point to some other conspiracy, or does Melnyk take the blame on that? Melnyk, it would seem, takes a lot of the blame, so the hate that normally would go to the National Hockey League goes to him instead. Right or wrong, that's where it would go. Philadelphia, the Flyers haven't won a cup since the mid-'70s, so I can understand the feeling of things being kind of the NHL against them, but the goaltending has been a circus for the last 20 plus years as well. So yeah, I can understand there being some concern in Philadelphia if you're a fan, but at the same time, the league hasn't been responsible for the goaltenders that have come and gone. Pittsburgh, the funny thing is, the argument for Pittsburgh is similar to Chicago's in that this is a team that's won 5 Stanley Cups since 1991. So the argument is the league favors Pittsburgh. The league clearly favors Pittsburgh. It absolutely favors Pittsburgh. And yet if they've won 5 Stanley Cups since 1991, how many Stanley Cup playoffs have they lost? When they got swept in the first round last year by the Islanders, there wasn't any help coming from the league on that one. So the argument that the league favors Pittsburgh, I mean, I've made jokes about it before. I've worn a referee's jersey with a Pittsburgh Penguins hat. I've done that before. Because, that's always been the perception. But the Penguins still find ways to lose, and I've never seen anything that to me was so egregious that clearly it shows that the league favors them. Now, if you're a Penguins fan and you want to say the league hates the Penguins, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I don't. San Jose, the argument could be made that the league hates San Jose, I guess. Some of these, maybe not. Because with San Jose, their problem is, of course, the Karlsson contract and the fact that Karlsson and Burns kind of perform the same role with the team, and it feels like that forward depth was sacrificed in order to keep Karlsson. So I can't look at where San Jose went in the standings this year and say, well, clearly there was a conspiracy against San Jose. St. Louis, the conspiracy ended last year. They won the Stanley Cup. And yet, I still saw comments last year during the run by St. Louis. Well, clearly the league's trying to make it so that San Jose is out and St. Louis is going to win the cup. And I'm like, wait, the league's trying to rig it in favor of St. Louis? Where's that been for over 50 years? Tampa Bay, does the league rig things against Tampa? That depends on what day of the week it is. Because I remember in the conference finals in 2018, plenty of comments, the league's rigging this against Washington. They're rigging it in favor of Tampa. This is an absolute tragedy. This is what they want. They want Tampa and Vegas in the final. That they're not going to be happy unless they get it. And then Washington won, and then the conversation changed to, well, clearly Washington had it rigged in their favor. We'll get to Washington, but again, I can't say the league hates Tampa, even though they haven't won a cup since 2004, because, again, they've gone through their share of rebuilds, and when they lose, it's often not that controversial. Right, Calgary? Right. Toronto. The league doesn't hate Toronto. They get Austin Matthews. Draft lottery result that if they hated Toronto, there's no way he would have gone there. And if they favored Arizona, that draft lottery would have happened to go to Arizona. They would have happened to have won that. It's a storyline that, honestly, you could almost understand from an NHL point of view rigging it that way. Where, Austin Matthews is in Arizona. What a surprise. And he's an Arizona kid. Who knew? So, if you're going to try to save a franchise in Arizona and justify its existence, having Austin Matthews end up there would have been the best way for it to go. But if at the end of his current contract Matthews decides to sign in Arizona, I am sure that Toronto fans will be completely understanding and not make any claims. Sure, that's going to happen. Vancouver, does the league hate Vancouver? No, management does. And that may be seen as flippant, but the reality is that, you had Pat Quinn come in and he made a couple of really good trades and then he stopped. Brian Burke came in and he made some deals and then he stopped. And then you had Dave Nonis come in, he made the really good Luongo deal and then he couldn't get them over the top. Gillis came in. Gillis gave out way too much money, kept the wrong guys, let the wrong guys go, and the team kind of falls apart. You end up with Jim Benning. Benning's not great on the contracts front. He's pretty good with trades, and he's pretty good at the draft table as well. And yet the Canucks still not a team with a Stanley Cup ring. And I think again that's just mismanagement. And before Pat Quinn, there wasn't a general manager who really had a transformative effect on the team for the positive. So I can't make the argument that the league hates the Canucks because they kept losing draft lotteries, because if the Canucks were a great team, they wouldn't have been in so many draft lotteries. Vegas, cannot argue the league hates Vegas. Don't bring up San Jose. Yeah, I know. I know 5 minutes, right? Yep. No, I know. Eakin and I know it was Stastny that pushed him down. I know. Yeah. Right. No, yeah, going to win the cup. Yep. No, best team in the league by far. No, the league doesn't hate Vegas. Not a thing. Washington, again, they won the cup in 2018. Before that, we could have made an argument about whether or not the league secretly hated the Capitals. Although it's noteworthy that Gary Bettman had been at a lot of Capitals games over the years. And I used to use that as an argument. I used to say, well, Bettman goes to all the Capitals games. Clearly, they're not rigging it for the Capitals. And then the next year, the Capitals won. So I don't talk about that anymore because there you go. And Winnipeg. And of course, the hate on Bettman with Winnipeg is strong because they lost the now Coyotes, but the team they got back from Atlanta actually turns out to be a better team than what they lost to Arizona, so they kind of upgraded. And there's no Stanley Cups going to Arizona, so they didn't really miss anything. So, does the league hate Winnipeg? You could argue that they would have won the draft lottery, but the NHL rigged it so they couldn't. I don't think the league hates teams. Because, again, you have 31 owners who are technically the boss for Gary Bettman. So the idea that Bettman has some magical power over them is incorrect. If Bettman came out tomorrow and said, all right, we're going to just start screwing over all these teams because I feel like it, owners would be calling for his head pretty quick. The fact is that the league has made more money under Bettman than it ever did. We've seen unprecedented expansion, and it's going to continue when Seattle gets on the board. And, the owners are pretty happy about making more money. And while players are making more money, the owners have direct contract controls in terms of how much money they're allowed to make. And, the fact that one team can't necessarily outspend what another team can spend. Though with signing bonuses and taxes and things being as they are, that's not true in all cases. But hey, let me know your thoughts on why the team secretly is hated by the league that you cheer for. So, because I see that a lot. Like, oh, the NHL hates my team. Okay, all right. So, and it changes from year to year. Like, the NHL every year comes in and they have their board meeting. All right, who do we hate this year? Philadelphia? Everybody like Philadelphia? All right. Do you hate Chicago? Sure, we haven't hated Chicago in a while. And just on a whimsy, let's hate Tampa. All right? Okay, so refs, you guys are going to screw all those guys in games. And then for the draft lottery, we'll give it to, I don't know, Nashville. Nashville gets the number 1 draft pick. Let Nashville know they're not going to be in the playoffs this year. It's so weird. But hey, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Again, happy Canada Day, as I said earlier today. And it is July 1st, which is a birthday for one of the moderators to the channel. So happy birthday, Lewis. There you go. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.